Join me tonight on Twitch at 10 p.m. Eastern after the conclusion of the playoff game, where we'll talk about everything that happened this week in the NFL. And join me Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern to play some live NFL trivia for a chance to win cash prizes. Link in the description below. And now, on with our feature presentation. One of the most important elements for a successful offensive game plan is making sure that your head coach and your quarterback are on the same page and on the same wavelength. The last thing you want between the two men is a philosophical difference on how the offense should be run. The last thing you want is for one man to think the offense should operate one way, and for the other man to think that the offense should run the complete opposite way. Because when that happens, and when it backfires on the biggest stage, it can lead to a whole lot of controversy and a heck of a blow-up and feud. Well, in the 1985 Divisional round, that's exactly what happened. A few months before, the Browns spent a first-round pick in a supplemental draft on Bernie Kosar, the star quarterback from Miami. And now, a few months later, he was leading his team down to the Orange Bowl, where he played so many times before to try and win a playoff game. What followed was not only a collapse for the ages, but a controversial game plan that had Kosar fuming at head coach Marty Schottenheimer, and a game plan so questionable that not only do fans still debate whether it was the right move, but a game plan so questionable that Kosar openly ripped into his coach at the post-game press conference to make his thoughts very clear. And this is the story behind the craziest coaching controversy in the history of the divisional round. Before I talk about the coaching move that left Bernie Kosar absolutely baffled and furious at his head coach, we need some context to understand how the game was going, as well as the significance of this game and the possible historic nature of it. In 1985, the Denver Broncos went 11-5. They did not make the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns, on the other hand, went 8-8. They had a negative point differential. At one point, they were on a 4-game losing streak and had a 3-game stretch where they scored just 2 touchdowns. Despite all of that, the Browns made it into the postseason. They were the first division champion to ever have a non-winning record, and excluding the expanded 1982 postseason, were the first team in the history of the normal NFL playoffs to ever make it without a winning record. I even talked about the 1985 Browns in a previous video of mine, when I talked about their embarrassing 37-10 season finale against the New York Jets, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And the opponent that the Browns, the worst playoff team of all time at that point, were playing was the Miami Dolphins. No one, and I mean no one, thought that the Browns had any chance of winning this game. Miami was entering the game on a 7-game winning streak. They were the defending AFC champions and were led by the great Dan Marino. Whereas the Browns had an atrocious passing offense that in the 28-team league finished 22nd in passing touchdowns and 25th in passing yards, the Dolphins could unleash their aerial attack at any moment, finishing second in the league in both of these categories. And to make matters even worse, the Dolphins were undefeated at home. Including the playoffs, they had won their last 10 games at home, and hadn't lost at the Orange Bowl since December 2nd, 1984, more than 1 year before this game. The Dolphins have won 17 of their last 18 games at home, and 22 of their last 24 games down in South Florida. And to make matters worse, of the 3 teams in the history of the NFL and AFL playoffs to enter the postseason with a record of 500 or worse, all 3 of them lost and got clobbered, getting outscored by a combined score of 114-24, or an average of 30 points per game. This is a long way of saying that the Browns had absolutely no chance at winning this game. On January 4th, 1986, the Cleveland Browns were traveling down to Miami to try and pull off what would have been one of the biggest upsets in the history of the postseason. Miami entered this game as 10.5-point favorites. And again, no one was giving Cleveland any possibility of winning this one and winning their first playoff game since 1969, when they won 38-14 in the divisional round against the Dallas Cowboys. If you want to learn more about that game, which again was their last playoff win entering this game in 1986, then click the card in the upper right corner. But that's why they play the game, because to the shock of everyone, Cleveland came out swinging. Early on, it seemed like this had the makings of a long day for the Browns. They went 3-and-out on their opening drive of the game, and Miami, thanks to some very good field position, wound up getting 3 points off of a Fuad Revez field goal from 51 yards out to take a 3-0 lead. The Browns are then forced to punt again on drive number 2. But once we get to drive number 3, Cleveland realizes that Miami has no idea how to stop the run. Miami was a pretty poor run defense all season. They were 23rd in rushing yards allowed and 24th in yards per carry allowed, and they infamously allowed Freeman McNeil in a Monday Night Football game to run for 173 yards and over 6 yards per carry. And today, they were atrocious. The 2-headed monster of Ernest Spiner and Kevin Mack, who each had over 1,000 yards rushing in the regular season, sliced and diced Miami's front 7 apart. Eventually, they get into the red zone thanks to their ground game, and Bernie Kosar does the rest, hitting Ozzie Newsome on a 16-yard touchdown pass to make it 7-3. Right before the end of the first half, the Browns defense comes up big, when Dan Marino gets picked off in the red zone. After Cleveland mounts a drive thanks to the fantastic field position and the huge play, they're able to punch it into the end zone again, thanks to more incredible running. On 3rd and 8, Ernest Biner gets the handoff and dives into the end zone for a 21-yard touchdown run. At halftime, to the shock of the country, the Browns are leading at 14-3. Of the 172 yards that the Browns had put up in the first half, only 28 of them came through the air. The rest, or 84% of them, have been on the ground. And that percentage was only about to go up, as not only do the Browns force a 3-and-out on the opening drive of the half, but when they get the ball back, Ernest Biner takes it 66 yards for a touchdown. Midway through the third quarter, the Cleveland Browns are leading at 21-3. Everything is going swimmingly. The team is averaging over 8 yards per carry and has racked up 213 total rushing yards already. And not only that, but history is on their side. Cleveland has never blown a lead larger than 17 points, so every time in their 4-decade-long history they've been up by at least 18, they've held on for the win. Sure, the Dolphins score a touchdown on the ensuing drive to make it 21-10 and get it back down to an 11-point game, but it's still not a huge deal. All the Browns have to do is avoid choking, and they're going to pull off one of the biggest upsets of all time. Instead, what follows is a coaching strategy that leaves Bernie Kosar absolutely furious afterwards, and more than 40 years later, still has Browns fans questioning if Kosar was right. On the first drive following their third touchdown of the game, the Browns go 3-and-out. A run that goes for 3 yards gets followed up by 2 incomplete passes down the left side of the field. Following a 31-yard touchdown run by Ron Davenport, the Dolphins are right back in the game, and the Orange Bowl can sense the momentum start to swing. This would be an incredible time for the Browns to get a drive going. Instead, they go 3-and-out, with the drive ending thanks to a holding penalty and a sack on 3rd down, where Kosar tried to step up in the pocket but couldn't find anything. After the Browns get a stop and get the ball back, they go on a 7-play drive. All 7 of these plays are runs, with Kosar never throwing the ball once. While the Browns are able to pick up some yards and get some first downs, the drive stalls after a pitch out on 3rd and 3 goes horribly wrong, costing the Browns 6 yards and bringing up 4th and long. Instead of possibly keeping the drive alive or going for it on 4th down, the Browns have the easy choice to punt it away. And with 2 minutes left, Marino drives his team down the field, as he tended to do, and Ron Davenport does the rest, punching it in from a yard out to give Miami its first lead since the first quarter, as after trailing by 18 points, they now lead at 24-21. Finally, the Browns abandon the run and call some passing plays out of necessity, but by that point, it was too late. Kosar tried to mount the comeback and threw it 5 times, but thanks to some awful clock awareness by Ernest Biner, who inexplicably made no attempt to run out of bounds even though the Browns had no timeouts left, the game was over. Cleveland's season had come to a heartbreaking end. And afterwards, perhaps no player was more furious about the loss than Bernie Kosar, because from the time the Browns went up 21-3 until the time they trailed 24-21, Kosar threw just 2 passes. And after the game, Kosar absolutely ripped into his coaching staff for this conservative play calling. We're going to dive into whether or not Kosar had a valid point in just a bit, but let's start with what exactly he said, because he was not exactly ambiguous in who was to blame for this collapse, especially after the Browns threw just 14 times before the final drive of the game. Now, the numbers were not great for Kosar, as he finished the game going 10 for 19 with 66 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a passer rating of 56. However, he felt that he was put in a terrible position by the coaching staff, and had they trusted him more to run the offense, they would have won the game. Kosar said that he was disappointed with the loss, saying, "We were ready, we had the game, and we let it slip away. We came here to do a job, and we didn't do it." But then he had some choice words for the coaching staff. He said, "We need to improve our passing philosophy. It's not at the professional level yet." And if you think that's a bad enough statement, don't worry, it gets worse. Kosar said on the heavy emphasis on the run when Cleveland got the lead, only to not score any more points after the fact and let an 18-point lead slip away, that has happened every time we've gotten a lead. It's as predictable as you can get. We need to loosen up the defense. He then said that his college offense was better, saying in Miami, we just fired deep to the wideouts when we got in trouble. But that's not the philosophy here. And if you think that's a bad enough statement, don't worry, it gets worse. Because when he was asked to follow up on those comments and was asked about whether or not the Browns were too conservative and whether or not the coaching staff made a mistake, he said, "Hard to say. Hard to say." Kosar was finding the nearest bus in Miami to throw his coaches under for having a game plan that only had him attempt 2 passes, both of which were long passes and not on short, easy completions, in a 3-drive stretch that ultimately cost them the game. He was not mincing any words with regards to his thought on Schottenheimer and his game plan that led the Browns to choke this one away. So that raises the all-important question. As harsh as these words were, at the end of the day, Was Bernie Kosar right? Well, it's complicated. Now this is where things get a bit complicated, because I think both sides are right here, which is what makes this all the more controversial. On one hand, yes, the Browns absolutely made some bad play calls. Running it on 2nd and 16 just seems like a complete waste of a down, because you're bringing up an obvious passing situation on 3rd down. The last thing you want for your rookie quarterback, especially one who struggled a bit over the course of this game, is to be in obvious long passing situations where routes are going to take longer to run and plays are going to take longer to develop. And the pitch out on 3rd and 3 was a really stupid play, especially because you have to think that if you get 2 yards on the play, you're going for it on 4th down, and you're able to hold on to it and kill more clock. Why you'd pitch it 6 yards back when your current game plan has worked really well, and when you have 2 downs to go 3 yards, I'm not sure, and I don't agree with it at all. Having said that, can you really blame Schottenheimer for not having Kosar throw the ball a lot? From the time the Browns went up 21-3 until that atrocious pitch play on 3rd and 3 up 21-17, the Browns called 12 plays. 3 of them were passing plays. The results were an incomplete pass, and a sack, meaning that on average, they lost yards on each passing play in that stretch. As for the other 9 plays, obviously they were runs. All 9 of those runs gained multiple yards. They were moving the ball pretty easily on the ground, and the only thing that was stopping them was stupid penalties and unforced errors. Miami wasn't stopping them. Cleveland was shooting themselves in the foot with a 10-yard penalty on consecutive drives. In fact, on those 9 runs, the Browns gained 40 yards, or an average of 4.4 yards per carry. Even though Miami knew it was coming, it seemed like they were having trouble stopping it. You do the math on how many yards you get if you're averaging 4.4 yards per carry and you have 3 downs to get 10 yards. You're going to be holding on to the ball for a really long time. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't have done things a bit differently. Only 1 of their 10 runs in that stretch, since I'm now including the pitch, went to the left side of the field. The directions were pretty predictable, so a bit more variety maybe could have gone a long way. And of course, the Browns always could have tried to catch the defense off guard and get their quarterback into a rhythm with some play action passes and some swing passes and screens, since the Browns called some of those in the first half and had some success doing it. So was Kosar's criticism justified? Maybe not. Either way, anytime you have a player, and the quarterback nonetheless, calling out the head coach for his poor game plan, it's going to attract headlines, and understandably so. Because in Kosar's eyes, and maybe in the eyes of Browns fans who agree with him, before we had the drive and the fumble, we had the collapse of the conservative. Get your official Jaguar Gamer 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 PM Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9, and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.